Hello. It's been a while. I missed everybody. Oh, there's nobody here. That's okay. I still missed nobody, I guess. Hi, I'm Ben Garves, host of the Garvescope Show, and this is the first Garvescope Show. You know, we've been dabbling lightly with live streaming and trying to figure out the types of things that resonate with people in the film industry, especially the business side of the film industry, which is kind of our niche. If I look like a raccoon, it's because I did not sleep yesterday. It had nothing to do with the show, just haven't been sleeping well lately, which is super abnormal for me, but whatever, let's keep moving. So let me talk to you a little bit about this show. So the Garvescope Show, we're gonna join up once a week for a very, very long show. It's gonna be pretty podcasty, and that's because part of it will be a podcast, so you can also check out the podcast wherever it is that you listen to or watch your podcasts, whether it's YouTube, and what platform? Android podcast, Google podcast store, cast place, and iTunes or whatever that's turned into Apple Podcasts. There we go. I swear I have an Apple device. You just couldn't tell by looking at me. So here's what we're doing. We're gonna join up once a week. We're gonna do a long show that deep dives into every piece of the business side of the film industry. And so we're talking going through the top business stories. We're talking fun and games. We're talking potentially guests someday down the line. Wow, I look that's a lot of bloodshot. Okay, we're gonna do a lot here. Let me share a little agenda with y'all. At least everybody who's not on TikTok. Sorry, TikTok. Will be streaming from a device for at least another week. But we're going to start with Room Tone. Room Tone is where we're basically going through all of the biggest business stories in Hollywood of the week, at least the ones that are relevant, not the fluff. We're going to do a segment called What's Above the Line, which is where we're ranking things. And this week we're going to rank what's above the line for streaming platforms and how good or bad they are, all of them individually, for independent filmmakers. We're going to do waves this week, which is kind of like digging into what the week's top story is. We'll do a little segment I'm calling Film School Dropout, where we're going to talk about the things that you don't learn in film school. This week, we're going to do a deep dive into the real cost of crowdfunding, because it's not... It is free money, but it's also like very much not free money for you. Then we're going to do a game I'm super excited for. Well, sorry, this is not the game. We're going to do something I'm calling Cam A, Cam B, which is looking at the two biggest threats to anybody in the film industry right now. This time we're going to be looking at AI. Is it a bigger threat than just straight up streaming platforms refusing to adopt independent films and invest in independent films? And then we're going to do Credit Check. We're going to dig into, and Credit Check is going to be a segment where we're digging into filmmakers who started from nothing. And honestly, in a little bit, in a couple of ways, everybody started from nothing. But Credit Check is going to be this week looking into Jordan Peele, who made a huge career shift. It's not like he wasn't in the industry, but he is in a very different segment of the industry than where he started out at, and I think that there's a lot to be learned from that. Then we're going to do Out of Focus, which is a segment where we do some hot takes on something that I perceive to be somewhat out of touch with reality, and this time we're talking about AI making movies. Then is this game I am wildly excited for called Real or Real, where I have had AI make up a movie title and movie description. We're going to put it next to an obscure movie and try to guess which is made up by AI and see if it can fool us. We'll do, I think 4 of those. I think I put 4 of those aside. Then 3 more segments to close it out. We'll do Taking on the Hot Take, which is where we're going to literally take on a hot take. I'm going to do a hot take this week and really dig into something. Then we're going to do Lights, Camera, Lawsuit, looking at a major lawsuit in Hollywood. This time we're going to go back to 1948 and an antitrust lawsuit against Paramount Pictures. It sounds boring, but it's actually fascinating and really does have an impact on how we do business today. And then we're going to do my other favorite segment, which is called Following Stephen Follows. If you don't know about Stephen Follows, you should follow him. He does these really cool analytics deep dives into the data behind Hollywood. Things like how effective is it when with audience retention when there's a kissing scene in a movie? It's cooler than it sounds, I swear. Okay, so that's what we're doing today, and we're gonna start with room tone, but first I have a fun little open for you.
From scripts to screenplays, budgets to box office, welcome to the Garvescope Show. Lights, camera. Garvescope!
Garvescope kind of cracks me up. I don't know why AI chose to scream Garvescope, but they did. So I guess that's where we're at with life. So welcome to the first segment, which I'm calling Room Tone. And in Room Tone, we're going to talk about some of the biggest stories going on in Hollywood, at least the business side of Hollywood this week. And the first one, I don't think any of us can ignore. It has been not just on my radar, but all over my radar, and that is the new Netflix series Adolescence, which is gaining a lot of popularity from the cinematography freaks, cinematography lovers out there, because it goes about its business doing hour-long single-shot takes. So an entire episode in a single shot, and you maybe thinking, oh, it's like 2017 where they just use creative stitching to stitch together shots. No. They spent 4 weeks per episode. 4 weeks? 4 weeks prepping an episode, going through it over and over and over and over again. And then they do the entire episode in a single take. And it is... I would kill. Okay, I wouldn't kill because that's on tape. But I would love to be on a fly on the wall of one of those episodes because it's flawless. It is so good. The show is emotionally deep. There's no shying away from it. Not in the writing, not in the acting. They don't hide from difficult shots. They pull it off, and if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. That's kind of my little watch of the week. I would 100% check that out. Now, something else going on the business side of things is that a Hollywood filmmaker, I'm just going to read the headline here, Hollywood filmmaker charged with defrauding Netflix of $11 million. This is an interesting one. You don't hear too many stories about Hollywood being defrauded, especially these streaming platforms. But there is a filmmaker that was supposed to be making a TV show for Netflix, Carl Eric Rinch, and he defrauded Netflix of about $1 million or $11 million. He was supposed to be developing a series that was originally called White Horse, and then the name was changed to Conquest. It was a science fiction TV series that was kind of a little bit AI focused. He was supposed to be developing it, but he ended up using the money to speculate on crypto. And then he also spent it on things like high-end hotels and rentals, and he bought luxury cars. And come on, man. It's hard enough for any of us that are like scraping by as independent filmmakers to get funding, and then somebody goes and does something like this. That hurts. I think if the people who were watching the show out in the world were divvied up that $11 million, there would be a lot of good projects that come out of that. So that I think that hurts. That definitely ultimately hurts the industry. The other news, which was kind of interesting, is Village Roadshow Entertainment Group, which, if you don't know them by name, was the studio behind The Matrix, behind Joker, behind Ocean's 11 and the Lego Movie. They've been in the midst of a long-running dispute with Warner Brothers, and it has ultimately resulted in them filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So rest in peace to one of the titans that brought us a lot of good entertainment. Well, depends on who you are, whether or not you think it's good. The other story, which this one almost made it to my Making Waves this week segment, but was superseded by something that happened in the last couple of days, and that is the Electric State. Oh my God. I used to complain about Red One being like the biggest modern day example of misguided film investment in Hollywood, because Netflix spent something like $250 million on it, and there's just no possible way that they actively make that money back in retained subscribers. So yeah, we don't have super transparent reporting on this, but we do know what reality is. So it stars, if you haven't seen it, it stars Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown. You can watch it if you have a Netflix subscription or if you're borrowing one from a friend or a family member. Vulture called it a piece of junk. I wouldn't call it a piece of junk, but I would call it one of those movies that your uncle watches. Like that everybody has that uncle who just doesn't necessarily care if a movie is good. He just cares if he has fun watching it. It's one of those movies. And yeah, I would say it's fun. It's not deep. It's not wildly creative, but it's fun. It's not $320 million fun. But it's fine. But, one of the other stories that kind of popped up this week about it is that it's already underperforming Craven, which was not a fantastic movie that came out in the last year. So you can see right now, this is from Netflix's own list. It's underneath Den of Thieves 2, The Twister. This is a documentary. This is not like Twisters 2 or whatever. It's underneath Craven. It's underneath Despicable Me. It's sitting at number 5. That's pretty embarrassing for one company called Netflix. Now, I am crazy excited for this new Seth Rogen show that's coming out on Apple TV Plus called The Studio. And so far, the people that have been seeing previews of it are talking about how awesome it is. So I can't wait for it to, I think it comes out officially later, March 26th. 2 days from now. I'm super excited. It seems like it's going to be super on the nose roast of all of the things that are really weird and messed up in Hollywood right now. It's going to be freaking awesome for everybody who gets to watch it. Which, like I saw this article and I was like, wow, Apple TV is really killing it right now between Dark Matter. Okay, that's 50-50 for you, but Severance, one of my favorite movies in the last couple of years, Greyhound, is one of their productions. They have a lot of really fantastic content right now. So I was like, oh, Apple TV is really killing it. And then sure enough, the very next article that I found is this one from IndieWire. Headline, Apple TV Plus reportedly loses $1 billion on streaming a year. Okay, so yeah. See, these streaming platforms aren't necessarily nailing it from a business perspective. And that's, if you're familiar, if you've watched any of these, at least the Ben on Film versions of this current Garvescope Show manifestation, then you know that I started Garvescope to really solve the industry problem where people are making really bad financial decisions because they have really bad data or they just don't listen to the data at all. At some point, it's not sustainable for the streaming platforms. It's not sustainable for the studios. That's going to rear its ugly head eventually. But I think that the one exception maybe two exceptions to this are Amazon and Apple. Because if there are two companies in the world that can float $1 billion in losses, it's one of those. So as a user, I'll say, Apple, feel free. Go ahead, continue to lose $1 billion a year as long as you continue to deliver good content. I'll buy your phone, okay? I'll buy your freaking phone. I'll buy your laptop. I'll buy your tablet. Keep giving me good content. I'll take it. So yeah, super excited for this new Seth Rogen show. We'll see how it pans out, but so far it seems like the early reviews are nothing but positive. Now, talking about losses in the film industry, Francis Ford Coppola, been in the news a bit lately, not necessarily for great things, largely because his self-funded film Megalopolis got a Razzie for the worst film of the year. He sat down on a podcast with Rick Rubin of music production fame, and they kind of talked about his financial situation, which is pretty interesting. I mentioned in a video last week or the week before that Coppola had financed part of Megalopolis' $120 million budget by mortgaging his winery, and that the movie was doing very poorly at the box office, both domestically and abroad. I think the number at the time was $14 million total global box office with a $120 million budget. According to this story, it's only at $7.6 million domestic right now, which means that he is just not in a good financial position. Some of the quotes that I wrote down, and I'll hit me up if you want a link to the story because I'll totally share it with you. But some quotes that he said to Rick Rubin: "I don't have the money because I invested all the money that I borrowed to make Megalopolis. It's basically gone. I think it'll come back over 15 to 20 years, but I don't have it now." I don't know if you know how old Francis Ford Coppola is, but he may not have, respectfully, he may not have 15 to 20 years. The guy has an incredible legacy, pretty good wine too, but I don't, what does this mean for his next film? I mean, he says in this, there's a quote in the story that says that he's going to have to make his next movie for very cheap. I mean, the guy owes potentially $106 million. So I don't know what cheap is cheap, but welcome to our world as micro budget filmmakers. He also, so another quote that was interesting to me in this story, he says, "As a director, I don't care if I lose all the money I have. I didn't do this to make money. I do this to do something more beautiful than making money." And that's fine. But also the movie was super weird, my friend. So yeah, $7.6 million domestic box office, a little over $14 million globally with a $120 million budget. Thoughts go out to you, my friend. I guess maybe there's the bright side of this is he could potentially do a lot more with a little budget, and it may kind of recenter him in his roots and the things that made him a fantastic filmmaker when he was younger. Fingers crossed. I mean, we wish the best for everybody. And yeah, let's jump over to. There's been some drama. If you didn't know, there's been some drama on Hollywood and the tax incentives that exist in California. So there were two stories. Both of them were in The Hollywood Reporter. One of them, the up and coming cities swiping Hollywood's dollars, talks about a lot of the places that are providing better tax incentives or just providing tax incentives that make life easier for filmmakers, both on the budget side and on the production and post-production side. They list out Louisville, Kentucky. They mention North Carolina. I know Morrisville, North Carolina. Morrisville? No, not Morrisville. Where's the Myrtle Beach? No, Myrtle Beach is South Carolina. I can't remember. There's a beach town in North Carolina that they film a lot of productions in. They mentioned Texas. I was in Texas 2 weeks ago for a launch event for a crowdfunding, crowd equity campaign being run by Robert Rodriguez. And during that, he mentioned that Texas is sponsoring a bill that is in their state legislature that will potentially finance over $500 million in new film projects in the state, which is relatively rare nowadays unless you live in Georgia. And it's making places like Kentucky, North Carolina, and Texas more competitive. We've already seen a ton of shifts of productions to Canada and the UK. What was I watching? I was watching a YouTube video that was a clip of filmmakers talking about, like, they just don't want to see all of the projects demanding them to go to Vancouver or Toronto. Vancouver. I'm sorry. I'm from Seattle. So when I say Vancouver, I sound like I'm from the Midwest or from Canada itself. I'm from Canada South, the city of Seattle. They were talking about, like, it's just every project that comes to them is asking them to either go to London or to Canada. And so the domestic cities and states that are investing in independent film tax incentives like Kentucky, North Carolina, and Texas, we're starting to see things shift to there because it's so expensive to produce films in Hollywood, which takes us to the next story from the Hollywood Reporter, which was one bold idea that could save California's film and TV industry. Anybody know what that idea was? Well, their idea was that, first of all, bring back some form of a tax incentive. But when you bring it back, don't invest in films via tax incentives. Build a process to invest directly in films. And that's fascinating. I would worry as both a taxpayer and as a filmmaker about what projects would get filmed. I don't have a ton of faith in equity in these situations, that the films that get funded won't be the films that already had a ton of budget or the filmmakers who have access to a ton of capital, which leaves a lot of us behind. But it is an interesting idea. I will give them that. Next story I had was AI story here for you. So there's a Swedish movie, Watch the Skies, which I'm a sucker for any sci-fi. I'm sorry. I'm into it. I'm gonna go watch it. I ain't scared of that AI. Big story behind it was that it got a distribution deal with AMC for a 100 theater run via XYZ Films. But it's a Swedish film that was dubbed entirely using AI voice. First of all, it's going to be interesting just to see what the level of quality is. Dubbing is hard enough when you have actors. I mean, as we go through this show today, you're going to hear more of these stings that were created with AI, and they're interesting. There is some almost like emotion behind it, but I don't know. Like, how does I am curious to see it. I will probably go see it in theaters. I live in New York. It's a pretty easy place to go see movies. There's no lack of these things premiering in this area. So I'll go see it. They can have my $75 or whatever the cost of a movie ticket is today. Because I'm curious, and I'll see it in streaming, but I want to see what this AI voice experience looks like when it's scaled up to Dolby and to that size of a screen. I mean, obviously, film itself uses real actors, but it's voices done by AI. I am of the opinion, and we'll talk about this later in the show, but I'm of the opinion that as of right now, AI audio is leaps and bounds ahead of AI video. Look, it's structurally much more simple to do, but I think that that's kind of where we're at. So it makes sense that the first thing that we'd see that's end to end using an AI tool would be something like dubbing. And you don't know what the original audio was supposed to sound like when you're watching a dubbed film. So, what exactly are you missing on? You don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. Just the Swedes, I guess. But, we'll see. So next story, Cleopatra Entertainment and Sandaled Kid Productions to back a slate of 12 micro-budget genre films. Really cool. Look, not a huge story. Not life-changing to anybody, but it is always cool to watch investment firms getting together, whether it's studios or production companies, to find a way to provide structured investment into micro-budget feature-length genre films. Cleopatra Entertainment is providing the financing for 12 features, while Sandaled Kid Entertainment or Productions is going to curate the slate and oversee the production. There's a list on here of, so the Sandaled Kid production was founded in 2020 by James Colin Bressick, whose credits include Darkness of Man, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, Hot Seat, and featuring Mel Gibson and Kelvin Dillon, and Fortress, starring Bruce Willis. Oh, wait, Bruce Willis was in Fortress? Am I thinking of the wrong movie? Hold on. Fortress 2021. Oh, yeah, I'm thinking of the wrong movie. Oh, Bruce Willis, make me sad. But yeah, shine a little light on the people that are doing the right thing for the right projects, and we hope that those 12 films have significant returns. The more people that are investing in these and can show that it's a valid business model, the better all of this is going to be for everyone who's trying to do similar work. Then a story crossed my path about South by Southwest, which really has its roots as a music festival and music conference. I think the music festival happened because of the music conference, getting musicians together to talk about the business and give them a chance to showcase their films. Well, I was in Austin for South by Southwest a couple of weeks ago, and it looked not wildly different, but a little bit different. I ended up Googling it. It turns out that at its peak, South by Southwest would have about 2,000 musician showcases. And as of this year, they were only slightly over 1,000 musician showcases. So they're seeing a lot less interest from musicians. And while the fans are going out and driving traffic, South by Southwest does have these two other arms in this little tri-armed being, and that is their interactive piece, which is kind of digital and tech startup type work, and or conference, and they have their film piece. And like I went to South by Southwest for the first time in 2009, 2010. I remember I was there for music as a musician, and I remember this buzz about Cabin in the Woods had just come out. It had premiered at South by Southwest, and I was like, "Oh, there's a film thing." Well, so it turns out this story, South by Southwest clarifies changes to 2026 music conference. They're going to shorten the music conference by 2 whole days, and they are going to spread the programming throughout the week. And they're going to use those 2 days to really focus in on and emphasize the interactive and film side of this. So if you're in the film industry, that's fantastic news. That means that the people that run South by Southwest are seeing potential and growth for indie films. And okay, look, if you're an indie filmmaker, if you're a micro-budget filmmaker, you may not feel like South by Southwest is accessible. It's kind of in that God tier film festival level with, Festival de Cannes and with Sundance and with Toronto. But even if you don't have those budgets, the fact that this film festival specifically sees value in growing the film piece of their conference, I think that that's a good sign, and that may open up more opportunities. Maybe it's just one more micro budget film that makes it in, and they're showcasing more $5 million indie films. But at the same time, there's a possibility that this is them following the data, that there's potential for more growth. I swear we're almost done with the news section. I just wanted to flag this last one. Studio profit report, lower costs are the name of the game. It's a Hollywood Reporter story that's looking at how the bottom line costs of film productions are rising, and that film studios are going to have to start investing in smaller productions. Obviously, bad news for Hollywood as a whole, especially the status quo, but potentially good news for indie and small budget filmmakers, micro budget filmmakers, because it means that people are going to start to turn more of an eye to these micro budget projects and potentially give you more opportunities to make more films. All right, that concludes Room Tone. We're going to move on to the next segment, which is called What's Above the Line.
I'm going to count to 10.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
Okay. So in Hollywood, being above the line means that you pretty much call the shots, right? In the film industry, there are trends, tools, and ideas that hold power, while others don't necessarily make the cut. So in What's Above the Line, this segment we are ranking and finding out what really belongs above the line and below the line. Today, the topic that we are ranking is the most powerful streaming platforms for indie filmmakers. We're going to rank them: Netflix, Hulu, Tubi, Apple TV Plus, AVOD versus SVOD. We're going to look at what's got better profitability options for filmmakers and opportunity, what has better size and discoverability for indie libraries, what has more accessibility for filmmakers, like how easy is it for you to get your film on the platform, and then how much creative and licensing control they give and maintain for indie filmmakers. We're going to stop at the very, very, very bottom of above the line, which means good, right? It means good. And that is going to be number 8, Apple TV Plus. The pros are that they really do have high production value that they emphasize. So the content that's on there, the content that you're among, is fantastic. They do sometimes fund prestige indie films like Coda and The Tragedy of Macbeth. On the other hand, the reason why they're down here at number 8 is that they really don't give you access to anything except for prepackaged films with like pre-planned awards buzz and A-list producers. There's really zero indie discoverability on the platform unless you're an Oscar frontrunner, which is kind of what happened with Coda, right? Like a lot of that felt ordained, like they had flagged this project from the start to be fantastic because great script, great filmmaker, great project, great film, worthy of all of the awards. But if it was not that, I don't think Apple TV would have propped it up. Number 7 on the list of filmmaker-friendly streaming platforms is Hulu, which, if you're deep into it, Hulu is a subsidiary of Disney now, but they do have occasional bright spots for indie filmmakers, especially via their Sundance, Neon, or Searchlight studio deals, but they're not open to unsolicited submissions. So that makes it, accessibility, it's not there. One of the things that I look at Hulu as being reliable for is that they do a fantastic job with their deal with Blumhouse Productions. They are like a good, reliable place to go for not A quality, but like solid B level horror slasher films. And sometimes I'm like, what would be reliable right now would just be a good slasher flick. So I'll just hop over to Hulu and sure enough, it's like one a week almost. There's some new Blumhouse production over there. But they have corporate pipeline bias. They're focused more on Disney owned content. And, as time goes on, we're seeing more and more higher budget exclusives on Hulu. And that's likely to just continue. Number 6 on the list, I am going to drop my friend, our friend, everybody's friend, everybody has it, Netflix, which is a which is a subscription-based video-on-demand platform, much like Hulu, much like Apple TV Plus. It's middle of the pack because it has absolutely massive reach. It can provide big payouts if your film is acquired, and look, the downside is that only top indie films are going to get in. You have to have a lot of sunshine, a lot of daylight on your film if they're going to be considering it. Their business model is flat fee licensing or just straight up buyouts, which are unfriendly to filmmakers. So what that means, if you're relatively new to this industry, is that they will just say, hey, we're going to give you, X amount of dollars so that we can stream your film for 2 years or a year. And there's no like, oh, you had a massive turnout for your film. It's super popular. It's way more popular than anybody expected. Here's another check for you. So you lose out. And it's just moved away from supporting true low budget indie film acquisitions. You want a case in point, you can look at this $350 million, The Electric State, right? They have startup level VC funding, despite creative accounting has allowed them to say, okay, I'm profitable now. But how profitable is profitable when you spend $350 million on one item that lasts for 90 minutes over the course of a year? And with the need to retain, not just get new subscribers, but retain subscribers, that may not be enough in the long run. It's moved away from being supportive of indie films. But if you can get onto it, that can be a great thing. I've also heard horror stories where indie filmmakers work their butts off in order to get access to executives at Netflix, and an offer comes through and they're super excited, and the offer is like, hey, we want to license your film for years, and we're just going to pay you a single flat rate fee of $10,000. Yikes. Number 5 on the list of filmmaker-friendly streaming platforms is Mubi, M-U-B-I. The reason it ranks here is because it's a fantastic tastemaker cachet. Because they're curating, carefully curating the videos that go on there. So from a viewer perspective, the people that are streaming on these platforms, they very much can enjoy the films that are coming through, and they're very likely to enjoy them because they are good. They also are fantastic for prestige level indie films and foreign films. The downside is that with all of that, they're very selective. Only a few films are really picked each month, and that makes it just not ideal for newer filmmakers without festival laurels or that are struggling to get notoriety that get them on Mubi's radar. Number 4 on the list is Olin, which, if you haven't heard, it's because it's an emerging player. Emerging player alert. Look, they're a super filmmaker. They're designed to be filmmaker friendly. They let filmmakers keep up to 90% of the revenue that their films make. It's really an indie first ethos that's running them. They have direct relationships with the audience, these are all fantastic things. The one thing that has it ranked 4th on this list and not first is it doesn't have the size, right? It doesn't have the platform size, doesn't have the audience, and therefore your films lack discoverability because the platform is still growing. But I would keep an eye on Olin because it's very possible that it is one of the major players in streaming in the future, because they're investing in the pipeline of indie filmmakers at a time that is very likely indie filmmakers are looking for more audiences, and audiences are looking for more indie films. Number 3, falling from grace, because a couple of years ago it would have been number 1, is Amazon Prime Video Direct. The reason it's there is because it does provide relatively easy access for filmmakers, and they do have global reach. The problem is they're basically shutting it down. You cannot really easily get access to Amazon Prime for your indie film. They've started to cull the herd. And as of now, payouts just aren't great. So they cut payouts in 2021. They're now much more selective about what stays live. It's still good exposure if you can get on there, right? Like to be able to say, hey, my movie's on Amazon Prime. They also do non-exclusive distribution. So if you're a filmmaker and you want to put your film on multiple platforms, then it can be on there. I got my email from Amazon saying that they're pulling my account from Amazon Prime Video Direct last week. So RIP. Indie Flicks is number 2. It's another smaller one you may not have heard of, but look, it says indie in the title. How could it not be indie film friendly? Their model is revenue per minute viewed, which is basically giving you revenue for how much of your movie is watched. It ranks pretty high because specifically it's built for indie filmmakers. That's fantastic. The tools that it has, I think, have really good audience targeting and pretty filmmaker-friendly terms. The education mental health initiative with their partnerships is really cool. But, just like Olin, it has much smaller reach, and it's very values aligned. And if those values don't align with yours, then it may not be a good fit, which puts up at the top of the pedestal I'm just kidding. I'm not going to give you number 1 yet. Let's go down to the bottom. Let's talk about what's below the line. And I ended up with two film festivals, 2 streaming platforms that I put below the line for just being nearly downright hostile to indie filmmakers. The first one, I think everyone's eyes are just going to roll, is Disney Plus. It's below the line. It's number 9 because they really don't have any indie filmmaker pipeline. They exclusively serve branded content from Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and the random things that they decide to cross over from Hulu. Disney Plus has 0 opportunity for independent filmmakers, even if they are prestige level films. It's just not built for indie inclusion, which means that number 10, the worst and most hostile to filmmaker indie platform, or its streaming platform out there, is HBO Max, now just known as Max. Look, they used to be much more friendly to indie filmmakers with HBO Docs and HBO Films. And I saw somebody on Reddit yesterday mention it's really cool to see HBO and Max investing in indie films. And then they cited what did they say? They were not indie films. Let's just say they were not. They were with adjusted for inflation, they would have been $100 million movies if they were produced now. But because they were from the 40s or something, this commenter was like, "Oh, it's really cool to see them supporting indie films." It's not. Those are not indie films. I'm sorry, they're not. So look, they used to be indie friendly, but now they're really not. I feel like the biggest shift happened after the merger with Discovery. So HBO Max, if you don't know, HBO and Max are owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. And after that merger with Discovery, I think they really had to cut costs. They ended up axing a ton of original indie content, even finished and released projects. They just took them off the platform. Maybe it was easier for them to negotiate releases elsewhere, where they're making money off of them versus relying on them to drive revenue and retain subscribers for them. Look, there are just cases where it's been actively harmful. So they've pulled films off of the platform to save money on residuals, and they set a really brutal precedent. Okay, so that was, what was that? That was nine streaming platforms. Is there one that you didn't hear? Is there one streaming platform I did not mention? Yes, and that is because it is number 1, the absolute above the line, first of all, but also the most indie filmmaker friendly streaming platform right now, from my perspective, where I sit here in this humble apartment, is Tubi. And there's a reason why it's number one. It's free to viewers, which gives it massive reach. It has really generous, from my perspective, ad revenue sharing for filmmakers. It's making it relatively easy to distribute onto their platform via aggregators like FilmHub. There's also a really cool bonus that it doesn't require exclusivity, much like Amazon Direct did. So filmmakers can multi-platform, and that means that you can build out a hybrid promotion plan strategy. You can pay for ads to it if it is the platform where you're getting the most return on your investment, and you can turn those ads off when it's not. I feel like Tubi's discoverability is off the charts. I'm a little bit saddened, but that it's owned by Fox. But hey, I mean, what are you gonna do? They have the movies. Solid with curated indie categories, makes it pretty easy to find indie films if that's your focus. But I think that that's as algorithms are starting to find that indie films can be profitable, they're going to be serving these things more and more. And so the platforms with the indie films, with the niche films that are interesting for niche audiences grow. They're going to be serving those more and more and more and more. Now let's jump to the next little segment we have. Making waves this week.
From Hollywood headlines to indie upsets, here's what's making waves this week.
Okay. Thank you, AI voice, for being wildly dramatic. Cool. So Making Waves this week is a segment where we look at a major industry player, whether it's a director, producer, actor, writer, film, or studio that is making waves. We're going to start with a movie. Didn't bury the lead for those who are following on YouTube or one of the platforms where I can screen share. If you're on TikTok, I'm sorry, but maybe next week we'll see if they unleash the ultimate power of screen share. But we're going to talk about Snow White. I've pulled up a story from Variety. Headline is Box Office. Snow White leads with sleepy $43 million. Robert De Niro's mob drama Alto Nights misfires with disastrous $3 million debut. Oh, I just watched Zero Day with De Niro. The guy's still got it. I will watch Alto Nights. I knew it was coming. I didn't know it came out this week, so that's pretty sad. But that looks Scorsese plus De Niro. The Irishman, not an exciting film. Maybe I need to go rewatch it. But yeah, we are here to talk about Snow White, which the theme of this is... Well, let's talk about the movie. Let's talk about the movie a little bit. So it's done $43 million domestic, $87.3 million globally against a budget of $209 million. One people are having fun with the name for sure, the brand for sure, the IP for sure. One trade called it more sleepy than happy. One said leads with sleepy $43 million. That's this one. Somebody else called it a box office dwarf. But look, at what point does there have to be some form of responsibility for streaming platforms, studios, investors, Hollywood in general, to make some just straight up common sense decisions about these things? The original movie that this is based off of, and the books that was based off of, was called Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. And you cannot eliminate 7 title characters' dark history in a reboot and assume that it's going to just be okay. What's the drive? What is motivating audiences to go see a movie when, one, they've seen the story told too many times, but two, They know how problematic it is. Like the movie itself is, and not to go on a liberal rant here, but like it's a woman cooking, cleaning, and nurturing 7 grown men. There are consent issues in the storyline. There's underage consent issues. Snow White was $14 in the original, or $14, 14 years old in Disney's original BIOS from their 1937 movie. But the Grimm brothers fairy tale at that time had her at the age of 14, meeting and being kissed without consent by an adult male prince. But if you go back to the original 1812 Grimm story, she was 7. She was 7 when these things were supposed to be happening. And I get it's a fairy tale, right? But whose fairy tale is having a 30-plus-year-old man kiss a 7-year-old girl? They made her early teens to make it more palatable. That's still not palatable. Like, what? It also vilifies women for being old and ugly. It paints a picture that old is bad and young and beautiful is good. There's Western-centric beauty problems where it's, the quote is skin white as snow, lips red as blood, hair black as ebony. In a day and age where the vast majority of your box office is going to come from international markets, and the character is named Snow White, how diverse can you make the film and still have it be the story that you're trying to tell? Now, it doesn't have to be... She doesn't have to be white. Not even remotely. But you're basing it on intellectual property where this person is heralded for being white, and you want it to be attractive to international audiences. Don't get me started on apples. I freaking love apples. This movie makes apples look real bad. Snow White makes apples look bad. I am anti-Snow White. So what do they do? What does Disney do to try to recoup this? How to save this project? What makes them think that they can release it in 2025 and it will be different? It'll be special. It'll be profitable. It probably will be profitable. Let's not bury that. But they swap out old ugly queen for Gal Gadot. They swap Snow White for a Latin actor. They never actually refer to bashful, doc, dopey, grumpy, sleepy, happy, sneezy as dwarves, but they do keep all the characters. They replace the creeper prince with a younger, charming bandit. They keep the kiss. And they think that that's they've fixed the movie, right? Hollywood Reporter says this movie, like the other remakes, wants to have it both ways and ends up going nowhere. So they lean on old stale IP. They try to fix it to match the modern day, and they make something bland and boring in the process. Bland and boring seems to be the trend right now for everything in Hollywood. It didn't have to be this. It did that. I think that's what really kills me is none of this has to be like this. But people keep making these decisions. The people that hold the money, that hold the keys, that hold the power, keep making these decisions. It wasn't even... Hollywood Reporter didn't even think it was a terrible movie. They said Rachel Ziegler shines and Gal Gadot glowers in Disney's most captivating live action update. They could have... why... If you're going to be held back by a system and a process and IP that is problematic and to many people protestable, right? Why wouldn't you just do some minor changes to the storyline and release it as something different? So the example that comes to mind for me is Zack Snyder, right? Zack Snyder wrote and created Rebel Moon to be a part of the Star Wars franchise. And when Disney didn't want it, he went over to Netflix, he changed some names and some characters, and he released it as Rebel Moon and Rebel Moon 2 and Rebel Moon 12 through 15. And it did okay. Like for the people that don't know and don't hate Zack Snyder, they like the movie. My dad liked the movie. My uncle probably liked the movie if he watched it. And so like there's an audience there for that. And I know when I watch it, damn, they did as close of a knockoff of Star Wars as they could without actually doing Star Wars. You could have done the same thing with Snow White, right? Like it didn't have to be a Snow White movie. You could have found a creative way to tell a similar story and deliver a similar sentiment, but diverge from the problematic IP and the problematic history of that IP. It's not even like the last or the first time that this was done. I don't know if you remember, but in 2012, 2 Snow White movies came out in the same year, both of them live action. There was 2012's Mirror Mirror, and there was Snow White and the Huntsman. But they're basically completely forgotten, despite having huge stars. It's the same IP, same massive budgets, not fantastic movies. I think Disney's riding this high of, like, Mufasa went on to make $700 million in the box office, right? So if they have similar output from something like Snow White, if people get past the title and past the IP to just go try it, or if kids hear about it and they don't know about the dark past, or they don't know the storylines in it that become problematic, they will go see it. And that's what Disney's banking on, right? Is that the name will carry enough prestige to make $700 million. But at some point, will it? Right? Like, what are other problematic films out there? Like, here's one. Can you name the movie if I told you this is a movie that says if you're pretty, kind, and you put up with abuse, a man will eventually save you? That's Cinderella. How about if you're 16 and get kissed while you're asleep by a stranger in the woods, you'll become a princess? Sleeping Beauty. There's a lot of teenagers in this. If you're 16, you should give up your family, your friends, your home, and your voice. No dark undertones of shut up and let the men talk here, to get married. That's Little Mermaid. And a 12-year-old indigenous woman needs a 30-year-old white man to show up and teach her how to live in nature. Pocahontas. Why? Why are we refreshing this IP? Disney, you're like the greatest storytellers on earth. You pay the greatest storytellers on earth. Why can't you come up with something new? Or just like do what everybody else does and just like change some names and do it in space and it's a whole new story. I don't know. You tell me what you think, but those are my thoughts. I wrote a blog post about it. You can go to garvescope.com/blog for that. Honorable mention for Making Waves this week. I was going to talk about Sean Baker. Obviously, he and his project Anora are doing gangbusters right now. Shout out to them, but I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to talk about, like, I'm just so not shocked to see this headline. Snow White leads with a sleepy $43 million. Saddened by De Niro and Alto Nights. But yeah, just wasn't shocked. I'll go watch it. I'll go watch Snow White. Like, kudos for making the changes that you did make and for trying. And kudos to all the people who worked their butts off to try to make it a fantastic movie. I'm sure it's good. Again, like, the reviews aren't terrible. The performances, not the actors' performances, the box office performance is terrible. So, okay, cool. Let's jump over to another topic. Film School Dropout.
Forget tuition. This is Film School Dropout, where we teach you what film school won't.
Okay. I don't know how I'm already losing my voice. Haven't even live streamed in like weeks. But film school dropout. Yes, we're doing another one. This is where we take a widely believed industry fact and we dunk on it. I am 6'5". I will dunk on you. I'm terrible at basketball. A guy asked me yesterday at like 4:30 in the morning when I'm going out to take my dog out, you play basketball? No, dude. I was 160 pounds and 6'5", and I played lineman because I was so uncoordinated. Those were the good old days. Anyway, the film school dropout, here's the topic we're tackling this week. It's the idea that crowdfunding is free money. The fact is there are a ton of hidden costs and risks to raising cash online. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. I will probably, not the film it's in production right now, but my next film, I will probably be crowdfunding for it. I just, you just need to be aware of the costs before you get into it, and that's what we're going to talk to you about today. It is not just strangers Venmoing you money for your movie's budget. The platforms take their cut. The platforms that the platforms use take their cut, and it's like a classic case of it takes money to make money. Hold on. I'm adding a note. I just thought of something. Okay, so look, the real costs. There are two really big, true physical costs of streaming platforms. One of them is that most of them do take a cut of the money that you raise. Kickstarter takes 5%, Indiegogo takes 5%, Seed and Spark, super filmmaker friendly, takes no cut of the money that you raise. And if you're doing something like crowd equity, which is where you're actually profit sharing, a platform like WeFunder takes 7.9% of the money that you raise. They're structured differently. They're managing stock and stuff. So WeFunder is going to be more expensive on this list. Just know it's for a very specific type of filmmaker and film project. Worry about Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and Seed and Spark mostly. I will say on that front, WeFunder also has, you're probably going to pay $3,000 to $10,000 in legal fees just to set up your campaign. Then there's the transaction fees. Now, so taking money off of what you raise is one thing. Transaction fees are basically these platforms passing forward their own business costs. Now, those business costs are that they use a payment processor. And payment processors, if you go into a coffee shop and you pay for coffee, you may have seen a sign, or you go into like a convenience store, you buy, a soda and some gas. You may have seen a sign that says like, hey, we're not taking a credit card for any transactions under $5. That's because the businesses typically eat the cost of what credit card companies charge you to process that fee. And that charge is typically pretty close to about 3% of the transaction plus a set price that's 20 to 30 cents. And that's what you largely see from these platforms. Kickstarter takes 3% of every transaction plus 30 cents per transaction. Indiegogo is very similar, 3% and 20 cents. Seed and Spark, 2.9% and 30 cents. And WeFunder, again, very different business model. They're usually dealing with much larger money. WeFunder, I think the way that their campaigns are structured, the minimum investment that you can do in these things, because they are considered a regulated investment, is like $250. So much higher amounts of money than you would typically see with a typical crowdfunding campaign. Crowd equity, again, very different. They take 2% of ACH, which is like bank transfer transactions, and 5.5% plus $2. 5.5% of your transaction total plus $2 per transaction. They also charge a $1,000 monthly admin fee, right? So those fees add up. If you're raising $50,000 on Kickstarter from let's say 500 investors, so 500 people pay $100, you're paying Kickstarter effectively $4,150. Indiegogo would be a little bit less, $4,100. Seed and Spark, the cheapest by far, like super filmmaker friendly, you're paying them still about $1,600. And then WeFunder with all the fees and everything. And again, this is WeFunder is to fund a business, not a project, right? They're taking somewhere between $11,000 and $14,000 in fees over the course of 1 year and the life cycle of your campaign. But those are like the upfront monetary costs, right? There's also the amount of time that it takes, the sweat equity of running a crowdfunding campaign, right? You need to promote it, create content, you need to talk to investors, you need to do fulfillment of all the perks that you give, because that's a big part of this. Like, people don't generally just invest in a project, they invest in some of the perks that they get, whether it's signed postcards, digital streaming, physical copies, signed scripts. You have to do all the fulfillment, the t-shirts, hats, the purchasing of those products, the customization of them, the shipping and the fulfillment to the people that are buying them. All of that adds up. And then the little cost icing on the cake people don't tell you about very often is that really successful crowdfunding campaigns, unless you have a huge mailing list and you can really raise the money just by sending an email, which is like less than 1% of 1% of us, you need to run ads for it. And you need to run ads for like a pre-sale. And if you go to Google and you type in, or YouTube, and you just type in, how to build a successful crowdfunding campaign, the very basic requirements right now for successful campaigns that everyone is saying is that you need to run ads to promote the campaign, and you do make money back on your investment. You still need to do a ton of fundraising. You can't just run ads and expect that to win this whole thing for you, but that you need to pay for ads. And a lot of them, depending on what you're fundraising, recommend somewhere in the vicinity of about $5,000 worth of ad spend for a successful campaign. So, you would have to be prepared for that. Okay, that was Film School Dropout. Let's jump to Cam A or Cam B.
One choice, two options, and no takebacks. It's time for Cam A or Cam B.
Okay, so every filmmaker knows that the toughest part of making a movie is making choices. And in the film industry, the choices really never stop. So today, we are lining up two options, Cam A or Cam B, Cam A or Cam B, and deciding which one is the better cut. Today's topic: what is the bigger threat to indie filmmakers? Is it Cam A, AI-generated films replacing low-budget projects, or Cam B, streaming platforms refusing to buy indie films? You might have an opinion. So do I. So look, AI, Cam A. God, why did Cam A have to be AI? Cam A, AI. Cam A, which is the idea that AI-generated films are going to replace low-budget projects. Here are the arguments for it, right? So tools like Sora do have the ability to generate scenes, and we have seen some examples of those. Peter McKinnon and Matty Puja, if you're... oh, okay, that was fun. If you're familiar with them on YouTube, just did a short film where they cut into AI-generated scenes. Look, these things can do it. Like they can deliver a scene, that's for sure. And they definitely, from my perspective, deliver those uncanny valley vibes that, hey, I want like this AI feeling of eeriness where it's not right, but I don't necessarily know immediately why it's not right. It just doesn't feel right. Like, oh yeah, it can deliver those vibes, and it can be creative. Without creatives, you can put in a prompt, and because it diverges or takes real liberties, you're going to get something that isn't necessarily what you asked for, and in some eerie sci-fi horror type experiences, that might be what you're going for, but it is very much limited with the duration of what it can produce right now, which means that you're going to have problems with continuity. You're going to have problems with voice and speech lining up because the speech has to be, speech like visual lining up because those two things are generated in separate platforms. But yeah, like there are, you could generate part of a scene or even like a background of a scene on Sora for like $50. It's like $50 a month for the top service tier. There's a study, or it wasn't really a study, and I'll get into that. A report that came out from CVL Economics in January of 2024 that said that 203,000 entertainment jobs could be disrupted by AI by 2026. I just want to flag here. It says could be disrupted. It doesn't say replaced. It's using disrupted and colorful language and rhetoric to imply that people are being replaced, but they aren't. They just basically said, hey, here are the jobs that exist in the industry right now where AI has potential to influence it, right? So, let's group in the editors, let's group in the writers, let's group in the the VFX artists, and we'll just say all of them could be disrupted. 203,000, big number, not accurate, right? Like, we are finding as users of AI that these tools enhance our workflows, but are not yet capable of replacing us. So let's talk about Cam B, and that is this problem of streamers refusing to invest in indie films. Some stats behind that. Over 90% of indie films don't reach mainstream theaters. We're all aware of that. Four-walling is hard to achieve. At the same time, pay for indies is tragically low. I said earlier in the stream that that Netflix is reportedly in some cases offering as low as $10,000 for some indie films. At the same time, there are over 5,000, almost 6,000. It depends on the year. Feature-length films released around the globe every year, and in some years, almost 2,000 feature-length films are released in the U.S. But if you are like me, you log into Netflix every day, and you're like, oh, there's nothing new. That doesn't mean there isn't anything new. It means that the algorithm isn't serving us things, but also of those 5,000 movies, 5,000 are not making it onto Netflix, right? That's we can be candid about that. Netflix is not buying 5,000 indie films each year. Yeah, let alone 2,000, right? They only really need to invest in 365 indie films for you to feel like there's a new piece of content every day. But they're not, right? That could be $50,000. That could be a $100,000 investment. That could be $1 million investment. And it is ultimately only $365 million investment into a new piece of content per day every year for their customers. Would you think that is high? Is that a high $365 million? Because it's not high relative to the 320 that was spent on the electric state. But it's also not high relative to the $16 billion that Netflix spends on content development and acquisition every year. $16 billion, right? So $365 million on $365 million indie films is not a lot of investment relative, right? That's a small chunk to give you the feeling that there's a new piece of content. Now, it's not just Netflix, right? I went out and dug up 13 of the top 24 streaming platform owners and their expense on content development and acquisition every year, and it totaled $163 billion. So that's just over half of the top 24. So we can pretty much assume that we're talking over 200, maybe $250 billion worth of investment every year. And those 5,000 indie films that come out each year are just not making it into these streaming platforms. So no, look, I see AI for what it is. I use AI. I use it to help me with research. I check its work. That's an important step. I play with it all the time. I want to stay aware of and adjusted to the developments as it develops. But as a filmmaker who uses it and would consider himself somewhat of an expert in the tools, I'll tell you 100% right now, AI is not capable of doing this. And we're going to get into this later. We're going to do a credit check. But after credit check, we're going to get into my hot take on AI. But look, the immediate risk, the immediate danger is that streaming platforms that have these gigantic budgets right now are not diversifying their portfolios, which means that they are actively supporting projects that are not going to ultimately result in them being profitable in the long run, which means they are probably going to, in some cases, go out of business or be shut down when they could just serve more niche content, cheaper niche content, cheaper, high-quality niche indie filmmaker content. But I'll get off my high horse. Just kidding. That's basically what this entire show is. I've been ranting for what? An hour and 15 minutes? Whatever. I could do this all day. Let's move on to the next segment. Credit
Every
check.
Hollywood legend started somewhere. Let's rewind their career and see how they got here. It's time for credit check. Before they were legends, they were just another name in the credits.
Okay, so we are talking about Jordan Peele. Now, Jordan Peele, let's stop, rewind, back it up. Credit check. The whole point is that we go into a success story for an indie filmmaker who moved from the small-time credits of their career into a major career. And it could be called controversial that I'm starting with Jordan Peele, right? Jordan Peele had a career as a comedian and as a filmmaker, largely a comedy filmmaker and actor, before he made his big, huge breakout as one of the most highly sought after horror flick directors and writers in the industry. But I think there's something to be learned from his ability to learn a new skill and adapt and change and develop something that he wanted to develop. Do you think Jordan Peele was surrounded by people who were like, oh yeah, horror is definitely the next thing you should be doing. Yeah, don't worry about comedy. Yeah, man, we totally got your back. No, he was probably surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands of people that were like, wait, you want to do a horror movie? I know that was my reaction. I love Jordan Peele, right? I love his projects. I love his comedy. Like, I watched Mad TV. And I loved it. I love SNL. Rest in peace, Mad TV. Maybe that makes me the only person here. But Jordan Peele, if somebody tells if a sketch comedy artist tells you that they are going to get into horror films, it's possible it's a joke, right? Like, is this a bit? Jordan, are you messing with me? No, he wasn't. Jordan Peele was serious. So Jordan Peele, if you didn't know about his comedy career, then I don't know what rock you've been hiding under, but he was on a sketch comedy show very much like, in some ways, SNL, called Mad TV from 2003 to 2008. If you like parody, then you may have seen him in Weird Al Yankovic's 2006 version of Ride and Dirty, which was called White and Nerdy. He played a gangster in that. My favorite Jordan Peele work up until his flicks was Key and Peele. I think I mean, look, there's so much good stuff. I love Megan, you forgot your jacket. I love I said bitch. I everything about it. I think some of the greatest comedy sketches ever written are the first two, if not three, of him and Keegan Michael Key's valets talking about Liam Neeson's and Bruce Willis. Oh, that's just good stuff. In 2016, they both did a movie together, another comedy called Keanu, which is not about Keanu Reeves. It's about Keanu the cat, which is a little kitten that they rescue, and then they end up involved in a drug bust, and it's a whole thing. And it's funny. It's funny, but it is not Get Out, right? Which followed the next year, which means he was probably working on these two things at the same time. He's in the tragic contention and deep emotional suffering story that is Get Out at the same time that he's acting in and creating Keanu, the cat comedy. But he does it, right? He pulls it off, and he completely changes his stars, right? He's segmented in this box that is sketch comedy and then dumb humor, respectfully, dumb humor comedy films. And he just says, let me just take that hat off. Let me put on this little director's hat. I guess maybe a director's scarf. Hold on. Let me put on my little director's scarf. And all of a sudden, I am directing, not acting in, directing one of the greatest horror flicks ever created. Like hats off to you, my guy. Then, the next year, high pressure, he manages to, sorry, not the next year, 2 years later, 2019, he releases Us. Imagine the pressure that the guy is under to go from comedy, actor and writer and director a little bit to horror maestro with a follow-up project. Okay. Also, you're talking about race issues at a very, very important time in our country's history for race issues. And that bar is set really high. How do you achieve it? You do it with Us, man. That was good movie. But then he's got to do it again and again and again, right? So he, Nope. Nope was, I love Nope. Again, me and anything sci-fi. He just does it. He does it. He just changes his stripes, and he is all of a sudden a completely different, same person, same comedian, right? You see him on shows. He is still funny AF. But he's doing it. And at the same time, he has this not immaculate, but really fantastic track record as a producer. His next movie is one that he produced. It's called Him, which is supposed to come out in September of this year. He produced Black Klansman. He produced Candyman. He produced Monkey Man, which came out last year with Dev Patel directing and starring in it. Talking about like helping other people in similar situations. Dev Patel, there's somebody who's completely changed the types of projects that they're starring in and working on and now directing. Like, everything this guy is touching is turning into gold. And it's so Nope came out in 2022. As of right now, partially delayed because of the writer's strike. His fourth directed film is right now scheduled to come out in 2026. It's untitled, but that will be almost 5 years from when his previous project Nope came out, and I think that we're all for it. And when I think about the types of people that I want to talk about and the lessons that we can learn as filmmakers and film business people about people in the industry for this credit check segment that we're doing on the show, I don't think I could have picked a better person than Jordan Peele. And I hope that we all learn something from and feel motivated and inspired by the work that he has done and will continue to do. And we all keep our fingers crossed We get a produced project this year and hopefully a directed project next year. We don't even know what it is, but I have a feeling it'll be fantastic. And that takes us to a quick word from our sponsors. Our sponsor is Random Black Mug filled with coffee. I don't have sponsors. Come on. What do you think this is? A movie that people, or a show that people watch? Let's jump into the next segment. It is time for my hot take. It's our segment called Out of Focus. Now, if you've been around, you heard me rant a little bit earlier about AI, and I really think that there's a reason to be alarmed about AI, and there's a reason to plan for an AI future. But now is not really the time to really worry about it. Not immediately. There are much larger problems facing us right now. And let me get on my high horse, do a hot take about the people that I think are out of focus on AI. The film industry loves a good panic. AI is taking over, festivals are dead, theaters are finished. But how many of these things are actually true, or is it just industry overreaction? Today we're putting AI under the lens and deciding if Hollywood is out of focus. Let's go. AI can generate an entire movie. Maybe. Is it fantasy? Is it a terrifying reality? I don't think so. I don't think so. If you've used these tools, yes, you probably see that AI could technically generate a feature-length film. Okay? You're not betting the truth there, right? Like, it physically could. It takes a lot of work, and the quality is middling to low at best. It's just not ready to make anything resembling a good movie. For one, characters are kind of glitchy, and they are uncomfortable in the way that they move. Like, anything that's moving is just not, it's not right. It's stuck in uncanny valley. And if you don't know what uncanny valley it is, it's when something has been created to mimic something and there's just something almost too perfect about it. But somehow AI generated video pulls off being too perfect and too broken at the same time, which is part of why I say I don't think that the tech is ready yet. There's also, like, faces they melt, they drift, they turn too fast. The motion is too sharp. The motion is too soft. They're still struggling with hands with like 15 fingers. That's a real AI problem right now. It's a tough one to solve. It's getting better. It's not there yet. Continuity just isn't supported by existing AI models. So by continuity, I mean, you're creating these clips 20 seconds at a time, right? So how are you going to take one clip and provide continuity when you're building the next clip? And you need to do this for 90 minutes. So let's do 90, what is this, times 60? We're doing 90 minutes. You got 20-second segments, and that's like ideal, right? This is if every segment from start to finish is usable. We're going 90 minutes, 60 seconds per minute, and 20 seconds per clip. You need 270 clips that provide continuity for the person watching. Otherwise, it's just this disjointed mess, right? If a director just all of a sudden jumped to a different character that looked subtly different in every single scene, every single viewpoint of the camera, you are not going to believe it. And maybe that's part of what AI film ends up being, is that you just embrace the fact that everything is a little bit different. But continuity, the reality is continuity is not supported in existing AI models. There's also just the fact that dialogue has to be generated separately. Like, maybe at some point you can feed you can select a voice and you can feed dialogue into the platform, and it'll move the mouth in sync with the copy that you write, and the voice will come out and it'll have the right inflection and tone, and it'll be the right voice, and you'll have voice consistency across the whole thing. But as of right now, those voices have to be synced in post, and somehow if you are showing somebody talking, the voice has to match up with the lips. And we see it, but it is a lot of effort to do that. And that's going to be a problem. We also have the recycling problem, right? Like everything that we're seeing in AI is based on something that already exists, and it can be adapted, and it can be weird, and we can enjoy the weird, especially for certain genres of film. But the new and creative ideas are just blending of other existing ideas. We talked about uncanny valley, blinking, motion blur, sharp and smooth edges. And none of it looks right yet. And in perfect circumstances, you believe it. And in very short clips, you can believe it because you don't have enough time for your brain to process what it is that you've seen, but it's not there yet. There's also just the fact that like the people that are really worried about AI replacing them, to me, is a misfounded concern. Because the work still exists. The work is just different, right? You need to engineer your prompts that get film clips out of AI. So yeah, prompt engineering is gonna be a job title, right? It's gonna be out there. That will be people whose job it is to put in the right asks to get the right result out. And it is going to be a very highly specialized and skilled job until these models get more and more effective, and it's going to be super important to film production. So think about doing that. You're not going to just work almost entirely without storyboarding, right? You want to plan this film out in advance. You want to be able to provide basic designs to the model to bring your vision to life. So storyboarding isn't going to go away. Post-production, to fix all the broken hands, broken eyes, broken lighting, fix the continuity issues. Sound design jobs aren't going to go away. Granted, sound is one of the things that these AI platforms are doing really well right now, and it's far ahead of the video because it's a little bit simpler and it's very pattern-based. But sound design and mixing and modification of music and the editing and VFX cleanup, those are all jobs that are going to still be super, super important. I think about everyone wants to hold up this Coke ad that was created by AI as this great example of how all of this is going to replace us. But that Coke ad took multiple human artists. It needed extensive manual edits. They had to clean up VFX, and it's still pretty broken in a couple of places. And they needed to shape the narrative that came out of AI in order to make the ad. And this is a $100 billion company, right? So, again, AI, in my perspective, is just not there yet. And here's a fun caveat. Even AI doesn't think that they are even remotely close. If you go into ChatGPT and you ask them, hey, how close are you to them? Ask the model, how close are you to being able to create a viable, real, passable film, feature-length film? It'll say it's about 5 to 10 years away from a passable film and 10 to 20 years away from a believable film. So yes, it's coming. And that just means that the jobs are going to move to a different place. But it's not now. It is not an immediate threat. It's a threat we should be preparing for, and the smart people will be preparing for a career that adapts to and takes advantage of the technology in order to continue to deliver quality products. But the ideas still need to come from humans, and the results that get spit out still need to be processed by humans for a very long time. Like in our lifetimes, we are still going to need humans in filmmaking. And just saying, hey, AI, really quickly, if you could just make me a new movie, I kind of want to watch a sci-fi thing, super spaceship and phaser heavy. I like Star Trek and Star Wars if you could do that, but I want something like more narrative driven. You're not getting those results, and you're not getting it instantly. You're going to take hundreds of people to make that happen. And dude, a future where that can happen is going to be so fantastic from an entertainment standpoint. We're not there from a career standpoint, and we're not there from a practicality standpoint. Let me talk about the new skills, learning new skills thing, because the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about anybody who says like, they're coming to replace us. Like I worked, I was a director of product for a company that was a major publisher out in the world. And our writers had unionized, and one of the major concerns that they had was, any semblance of AI doing our jobs for us. We never delved into AI, and we protected those jobs all the way to the point where we went bankrupt. So I'll just throw that out there. But it makes me think of auto workers and the argument that auto workers had that robots were going to replace them, right? Robots did replace them. But new jobs were created, right? Somebody had to operate the robots. My dad worked for Boeing, making airplanes for almost 30 years. And over those 30 years, imagine the automation that came in and disrupted the job. He never lost his job. He just adapted to new skills and learned new things and learned how to use new equipment that made his job safer and less repetitive, and protected human workers and shifted them to supervisory roles and running diagnostics and doing programming and high-skill labor. Plus, when you look at it from an auto worker standpoint, you know what really happened in the auto industry when robots joined the process? It became affordable for more people to have cars. The price of cars dropped, which meant that more people could have them. It didn't eliminate the jobs. It increased demand because more people could have them because the prices dropped. And so think about that and scale that to what's happening in film and in creative industries, but with AI. Writers needed to learn how to use the ballpoint pen from the quill. They needed to learn how to use the typewriter from the ballpoint pen and the pencil. They had to learn how to use the computer. Musicians needed to were concerned that they were going to be replaced by Auto-Tune and Logic Pro and GarageBand and all these like low-cost digital editing platforms when they were at the time editing in analog platforms. But all that it did was really remove like the 90s studio gatekeepers as powerful entities in the industry. And yes, okay, so the streaming platforms and music and their pay scales for musicians are a fucking tragedy. But at the same time, indie producers have absolutely boomed, and everyone now has the tools to unlock creativity at scale. Same thing with cinema cameras, right? So for $4,000, you can go out and buy a Sony FX3, which is a camera that's used to make $100 million productions versus having to buy a $100,000+ Arri Alexa. There is accessibility that makes the art available to more people. If it wasn't for the digitization of the music industry, we wouldn't have Billie Eilish in her bedroom or Hans Zimmer working with 100-track songs. Film photographers feared digital photography, that it would be less artistic and it would eliminate craftsmanship. And what we're finding right now is that there's space for both and that there's no lack of new opportunities for creativity. The creativity may manifest itself in other ways outside of the camera, in addition to in the camera. But there's a life for all of it. And all these things do is continue to grow. And as long as the artists are protected, there's always room for the artist. But those artists have to learn and grow with the technology. Citizen journalism. Everyone said that social media was going to ruin journalism. I'm being facetious now. Citizen journalism did ruin journalism. But what about YouTube, right? YouTube is a democratic tool that eliminates gatekeeping in content sharing, right? It allows me to reach you. It allows all the people that you follow to build audiences and connect with those audiences. It allows you as somebody who watches content and consumes content to follow the things that you want and not the things that you don't want. Political bubbles that we are building aside, this is all a democratization of our ability to make fantastic content, more so than anything else. And I really do want to urge the people who are afraid of AI to go experience AI. One, because you're going to see there are things that it's good at, and there are things that it's really bad at. And the people who are really effective with using AI technology and massive language model technology, large language model technology. I just invented something. Massive language. It's an LLM. It's an MLM. Go experience it. There are things that it's really bad at. There are things that it's really good at. And there are things that you're going to find it's going to be really helpful for you with. If I had to plan this multi-hour show every week from scratch without a research assistant, I wouldn't be able to do it. And I'm able to do this show today because AI helped me with my research. I went and I then checked all the facts, and I definitely found things that it was incorrect about. But I couldn't have put it together if it wasn't able to streamline that process a little bit. And look, I am a nut job in his basement, and by that I mean a tall building in New York who can't afford to pay somebody. And the instant that I can pay somebody to do that, I am so excited to do that because I'm going to get so much better results from somebody who is doing it than instead of AI. So go experience it. If you haven't experienced it, go experience it. If you want to experience it, go experience it. Go use the tools before you criticize them. One, because you're going to feel a lot better about your job security. But two, because you're also going to find that there are ways that it can help you. Okay, I want to play a game. Let's play a game. This one is called Real or Real. So, real or real? Oops. Oh, I lost my sting. Sad. Okay, well, Real or Real is a game. Every great movie has a mystery, a challenge, a moment where the hero must face the unknown. And today that hero it's going to be me. Yeah. Welcome to Real or Real, the segment where I'm given two movie descriptions, one pulled straight from a real Hollywood production and one completely fabricated. The question is, can I separate cinematic truth from fiction? And will I fall to the ultimate plot twist? There's only one way to find out, and this is today's segment of Real or Real. So what we're going to do here, I am going to pull up descriptions of two movies. One of them is a real movie. One of them was created by AI, and I am going to hopefully not know either of these, and I'm going to have to take a guess on which one is real. So, first, side by side, Real or Real. First movie, The Velocipaster. Okay. After losing his parents, a priest travels to China where he inherits a mysterious ability that allows him to turn into a dinosaur. Okay. At first horrified by his new power, a hooker convinces him to use it to fight crime. Some things are so weird that I can't possibly believe that it wasn't created by AI. Okay, second movie, Kangaroo Jacked. A down-on-his-luck boxer in Australia is cursed by an indigenous shaman, causing him to transform into a kangaroo during fights. To reverse the curse, he must win a championship title without throwing a single punch. I mean, okay. I haven't heard of either of these. I'm going to guess Kangaroo Jacked was created by AI. To me, there's a plot hole, right? Like, if this fighter can't fight, then what is this? This is a body horror emotional drama? Okay, let's see here. Velocipaster is real. Okay, so I'm Velocipaster. Okay, I'm gonna put that on my watch list. All right, let's next film for real or real is we've got steel and wool versus rubber. Steel and wool. When a disgruntled blacksmith unknowingly crafts a haunted suit of armor, he must stop it from seeking revenge on its former owners before it takes over his body. That actually kind of sounds like Venom. Okay, rubber. A sentient, homicidal tire with telepathic powers embarks on a killing spree in the desert. I mean, I'm going to have to go with the blacksmith. Wait a minute. Hold on. When a disgruntled blacksmith unknowingly crafts a haunted suit of armor, he must stop it from seeking revenge on its former owner. Okay, see, there's a plot hole here. So if he's trying to stop a suit of armor he created from taking revenge on its former owners, so steel and wool has to be fake. Steel and wool AI. Rubber is a real movie, so I need to go watch my little tire horror movie. All right, what's next? What you got, AI? Real or real? Swiss Army Man versus Castaway 2, Wilson's Revenge. Oh, okay. Unfortunately, AI has not outsmarted me on this one. I've seen it. But I'll read them for you, and you can take a guess. Swiss Army Man. A man stranded on a deserted island befriends a corpse with unusual abilities, using it to survive and find his way home. Or Castaway 2, Wilson's Revenge. The volleyball that once saved a man's life washes up on a new shore, possessed by an ancient spirit. This time, the stranded survivor might not make it out alive. I will say, Castaway 2, Wilson's Revenge sounds like it's channeling Weekend at Bernie's and Weekend at Bernie's 2. But I know the truth. Swiss Army Man is a real movie. And not only that, but it is like I think it's the last time that Shane Carruth was seen in a movie. I can't remember if the movie that he just starred in separate from that was before or after, but he has a cameo at the end of, I remember watching Swiss Army Man. First of all, thinking like, okay, this is a weird movie. But also being like, wait, was that Shane Carruth? He plays like a mortician at the end of the anyway. Okay, so yes, Swiss Army Man is real. Castaway 2, Wilson's Revenge is not. Let's do one more real or real matchup. If you're just joining, real or real is a segment where AI generates a fake movie and puts it up against an obscure movie, and we are all trying to guess which of these are real and which is fake. So this last matchup, we have Milk and Honey versus The Stuff. So Milk and Honey is a struggling dairy farmer discovers that his cow's milk causes prophetic visions, leading him to start a cult of devoted followers who worship the Great Udder. Or The Stuff. A mysterious, addictive white substance is marketed as a new dessert, but those who eat it begin to turn into mindless zombies. Honestly, I would watch either one of these. Just for the sake of it being super weird, I'm going to guess that Milk and Honey is AI generated. Let's check. No. Yes. Milk and Honey, AI generated. The Stuff is real. Okay, so there's actually a movie out there where people just eat random desserts and it turns them into zombies. I guess that's pretty much par for the course for zombie movies. All right, let's jump into the next segment. We're going to take on the hot take.
Some takes are cold, some are bold, and some are just wrong. This is Taking on the Hot Take.
All right, taking on the hot take. Also, if you're just joining, welcome to the Garvescope Show. You didn't need me ducked down like that. We do deep dives into the business side of the film industry, and we are powering through. What is this? We're getting pretty close to hour number 2. Okay. Setting a personal record. Longest live stream I've ever done. Let me just do some cleanup real quick. All right, so taking on the hot take, filmmaking is built on innovation, but not every trend changes the industry. Some things are the next big things, and others are just smoke and mirrors. We are taking on the hot take. So, for this today, my hot take is filmmakers should focus on brand deals and sponsorships instead of box office. Look, I know box office is like God mode. We all want big box office returns or just any box office return, but I don't think that it is something that we should all feel comfortable striving for. It's just not attainable for many of us. And as time goes on, box office is less and less a true measure of success because streaming results are, and a lot of the streaming results that we are getting are poorly reported or just straight up not reported by streaming platforms. It's just a known issue, right? These streaming platforms have no incentive to share data with each other. One, it drives up the bidding on valuable indie films that could change platforms when licensing comes back up. But two, because they're all competitors, right? Like, why would they want to stream that? We don't have a box office mojo equivalent that's just tracking these global sales numbers that's being reported by theaters. The infrastructure doesn't exist yet. You know, I started Garvescope because I want it to be that, and maybe someday we'll get there. But until then, here's my hot take. Your alternative source of revenue and measurement for success could be something like brand deals and sponsorships, whether or not you've attained them. So first of all, if you do manage to get into movie theaters through some form of distribution deal, studios keep 60% of domestic box office and 20 to 40% of international, which means that you are starting your theater run at a deficit, right? That's money you have to recoup in order to actually start to make money from your theater run. So if you are able to bring in sponsorships and brand deals, it lowers your break-even point. Right now, if you let's say we're this what was this film In the Night or something like that that just got announced is going to have a 100 theater opening run. It is going to need to make 2 to 2.5 times its budget in order to break even and for the filmmaker to actually start making money from that theater run. And so if you're able to decrease the cost of your budget, it lowers the barrier to your break-even point, and you can start breaking even and making profit from even something like box office a little bit earlier. It also, you can use it for in-kind contribution. You can use sponsorships as in-kind contributions to lower the costs of making a film outright because you can have a sponsor paying for something like food or cameras. It removes that cost and again lowers your overall budget, which means it's going to be easier for your film to make profit. Look, it's not flashy to be like, oh yeah, I made a film and Chipotle did the food for us, so it was successful. Like, that doesn't feel like a win to you. Not like saying, oh yeah, we were screened in 10 theaters across the US for a week, but the $10,000, $15,000 box office that your indie film is going to show for that 10 theater run is not going to be profitable, which is going to hamper and hinder your ability to make your next film project. So maybe focus on a personal win, which would be getting something like sponsorships and product deals and brand deals for your film. It's a different goal. It's not a braggable goal, but it is something that is going to help you in the long run make more films. If you're interested in pursuing something like a sponsorship or a brand deal for your film project, send me a DM. On YouTube, you can go to garvescope.com. You can go to Instagram or TikTok or whatever. Send me a message. I'd love to share some tips with you about how you can secure brand deals and sponsorships for your films. Not enough people do it, right? You only really see it in large films, but if you dedicate time to it, you can pretty easily find creative ways to feature brands in your art, or find ways to deliver value for local brands that are like reared up and ready to reach new audiences. And it's a really exciting thing that just not enough people take advantage of. All right, we're going to jump into one more little segment. Oh, I guess we got two more. We're going to do lights, camera, lawsuit. So they say all the world is a stage, but in Hollywood, sometimes the real drama plays out in a courtroom. Welcome to Lights, Camera, Lawsuit, where we break down the craziest legal battles in the film industry, from legendary copyright disputes to lawsuits so ridiculous that they become a comedy, or they honestly belong as a part of a comedy script. But let's dive into today's case, see who got sued, figure out why filmmakers should care and how they can avoid making a similar mistake, and even end up starring in their own legal thriller. Ugh. Woo, I've been talking too much. Okay, lights, camera, lawsuit. This is not meant to be a boring segment. This is actually really fascinating because a lot of the standards and norms that we see in Hollywood today are dictated by legal decisions that are either protecting or limiting or regulating behaviors in the industry. And so today I want to talk about the Paramount antitrust case. Now, this was the formal case name was United States versus Paramount Pictures Incorporated. This goes all the way back to pre-1950. The lawsuit was, or the decision came down in 1948. So the U.S. government sued Paramount, Warner Brothers, MGM, 20th Century Fox, RKO, and other major studios, saying, well, not saying, because this is pretty much decided. Basically, studios were owning theaters, which meant that they dictated what was airing in those theaters. They controlled what played there. They blocked independent films from screens. They blocked competitor films from screens. And they forced block booking, which, basically bundled films together sight unseen to put them together. It really limited the things that people could do and access to theaters. Now, if this sounds a little bit familiar to you in the modern day, yeah, that's because there's a modern day tie-in. So let's talk about the ruling. So basically, the U.S. government found studios they were guilty. They were guilty of basically a monopoly. They were dictating and forcing what could be played, profiteering on what was made available to consumers versus giving consumers the right to choose. They were forced to divest from their theater chains. They were forced to stop doing block booking, where they were, booking these things sight unseen. Independent theaters now had an option to choose which films they wanted to screen, and it really opened the door for indie filmmakers and smaller studios to start to gain theatrical access. So fast forward, vertical integration is back, baby. That's not a good thing, unfortunately. It's just been rebranded. Basically, in 2020, the Department of Justice formally ended the Paramount consent decrees, saying that the market had changed. What that means is that anybody who wants to seek protection from companies like Pixar, Marvel, or companies like Disney from only airing or sharing Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilms type content on their platform, they fully are within their rights to do that. Amazon owns MGM, and if they only show MGM content and they don't let anybody else share MGM content, they are protected. Same with Netflix and the content they produce. So streaming is basically a new monopoly battleground. And while this lawsuit from 1948 regulated theaters, it in theory should protect consumers from the type of gatekeeping that we are now seeing on streaming platforms. But deregulation and adjustments in court and political sentiment in this country have led to the upholding of these companies' rights to bogart their screen time to only their content. At the same time, algorithms are determining what gets visible, and the companies that write those algorithms are the companies that are benefiting from their own content being shared on those platforms. I get it. We develop the content. We want to share the content. People are paying us for our content, not for other people's content. So we're not going to pay for other people's content, yada, yada. But it's really just, it's burying indie films. And unless you're a festival darling and you come with major label packaging, you won a bunch of awards, you're probably not making it onto these platforms. And that's been protected. So the Paramount case kind of proved that when studios were in control of distribution, creativity suffered. And you can see like the instant that these protections were passed through the courts, the vertical monopolies were broken up. It gave birth to indie film movements of the 60s and 70s that gave us people like Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, John Lynch, Cassavetes. Now the decrees are basically dead again. We're headed into, maybe we're in. You know what? It feels like we're in. We are in another dead zone of the streaming. We are in a new dead zone, but this is the dead zone of the streaming era where creativity is limited to platforms, and platforms are limiting themselves to the intellectual property they already own or invest in. And we have to, the feeling, have 15 different subscriptions in order to see a variety of content. It's unfortunate, but that's why this little segment exists. I wanted to talk about it. Now, let's go into our final segment. It's one I don't think you are going to find anywhere else. It's called Following Stephen Follows.
The data's in. The numbers don't lie. We're following Stephen Follows.
Okay, let's follow Stephen Follows, my friends. So, Stephen Follows, if you don't know him, I don't even know if he's a he. I mean, he's a he. Look, he has a byline here. Stephen Follows is, I'm going to call him an analyst. What does he call himself? Oh, he calls himself an analyst. That's great. He does these really incredible deep dives into the data behind the film industry, and I love everything that he does. This content, excuse me, didn't mean to burp. This content is gated. I say this at the mercy of Stephen Follows. Go follow Stephen Follows. Go pay for the subscription. It's worth it. If you nerd out on these things, it's such good stuff. I have a couple of stories up here. We're not going to do all of them. We're going to just pick one together that we think is the most fascinating, and we can deep dive into it. First story, the biggest forces reshaping the film business right now. From streaming upheavals to AI-driven production, these interconnected shifts define where the business of film is headed and the opportunities and challenges they present. That's option number one. Option number two, practical advice for indie directors who want to keep making films. How to build a sustainable career as an indie director in a constantly evolving industry. Option number three, the shifting economics of theatrical cinema and what it means for the film business. Theatrical cinema is evolving, shrinking windows, hybrid releases, and premium formats. Even event films, Gen Z trends, and AI-driven strategies are reshaping the big screen business. All right, two more options. Do movies with numbers in their subtitles in their titles perform worse than those without? Oh. And it's a video. Let's not worry about that. Okay. You know what? It's not personal, but I'm going to decide for you. I think we should learn together if movies with numbers in their titles perform worse or better than those without. Again, thank you in advance to Stephen Follows for letting us do this, but go subscribe. he publishes a ton of content. It's all fantastic. So I guess the origin of this story, it looks like Mickey 17, the 9th grade in 1408, 1917, 8 Mile, and 2001 A Space Odyssey are all movies with numbers in their titles. Says he set out to find the answer by studying 420,385 featured films. See, this is the level of quality that you get from a Stephen Follows story. So, which numbers count? Oh, this is fantastic. You know, let me log in here. Now you have my email address. Oh, man. Okay, Mr. Phone. All right, we can't do it. All right, we're going to have to tune in next week, unfortunately, but on the bright side, we just hit hour number 2. It's a personal record. Let's talk wrap up. Look, for everybody who stayed through to the end, woo, that was a long live stream. I don't know if 2 hours a week is sustainable, but we're going to try it. We're going to try it. We'll try it next week, see if I can come up with the same level of content. Thank you for watching the Garvescope Show. I'm Ben Garves. Tomorrow I'm going to be live again. We're going to dig into, I had a fantastic conversation with ChatGPT about what it believes is wrong in the film industry. It was a really cool conversation. It was really eye-opening. You can be hesitant about AI technology and LLMs, but you should not pass up the opportunity to ask something that has access to the world's data what it, without bias, feels about an industry like Hollywood and its positives and negatives and what it's doing right and what it's doing wrong. So tomorrow we're going to do a live stream where we go through that conversation that I had with ChatGPT. Again, it was super fascinating, and it's really interesting to hear what an LLM feels and thinks about the things that it sees, because it is a wild industry. I think anybody who watches this agrees. Thanks for watching. I'm Ben Garves for Garvescope, which, by the way, go check us out, garvescope.com. Read the blog. Lots of great content on there. We're making business tools for filmmakers. We're trying to make filmmakers better at business, from marketing to distribution to fundraising to budgets and everything in between, including festivals. Check us out, garvescope.com, and we will see you next week.
That's a wrap. See you next time on Garvescope Show. And cut. Print. We're out.